Has anyone noticed the elephant in the room? What do I mean by that? Well, let's start off with Mr. Joe Biden, and I will call him Mr. You can infer from that what you will. So the elephant in the room. You know that old saying, how can you ignore the elephant in the room? Well, you can't for most people, but for some people, they will they will probably ignore it till it crushes them to death. you know. Let's start off with Joe Biden. Joe Biden. Man, his last press conference was out where the buses don't run. That created a huge elephant in the room. That's just one of many elephants in the room. He said in his press conference, and this is just unbelievable, really, in his last press conference, which was barely covered by the mainstream media, and if it was, well, it was spun to mean they spin things in their own way, as we all well know. But anyway, in his press conference, he said that he was, I don't know if people missed this or what, but he said that he was, when he was in the Senate, quote, 120 years ago. Wow, really? And that just went right over everybody's head. When I was in the Senate 120 years ago. Wow, he must be an alien if he's that old. Here's another thing. He got to a point in his press conference where he was stammering and stuttering and he couldn't even keep his thoughts coherent. So he said, oh, never mind. When he got to the point where he couldn't think about what he wanted to say and he had completely lost it, he goes, oh, never mind. This is the elephant in the room. This is one of the elephants in the room. I mean, how can you ignore it? What is senility? Is being senile a prerequisite for being the president now? Man, I guess they'll let anybody be president. And then you got this Kamala Harris. Here's another elephant in the room. Every time they ask her a question, she slips into this laughing mode. I would compare it to that of a hyena. That's what I would compare it to. Is when she laughs, it sounds like a hyena laughing, and she laughs uncontrollably just on specific questions that are asked of her. So of course, right there, you got another elephant in the room. I mean, why would somebody? And this is the vice president. Okay, so you have the vice president that's basically senile. And then you have the president, excuse me, that's basically senile, has all the earmarks of senility. And then you got the vice president who laughs uncontrollably at questions that are asked of her. Like I said in my last video, you couldn't make this shit up. Not really. I mean, this must be Comedy Central. I think maybe we're in Comedy Central now. Is that a great awakening? Everybody's going to laugh themselves to death over a reality that is in the Twilight Zone? Unbelievable. I'm just reporting on things here. I'm not. Let's look at this as almost like a comedy routine, because that's what it's gotten to be. It's a joke. Like I said in my last video, it's a cosmic joke. Now, I want to address something that I said in my last video. because I do get fallout, I do get feedback. So when I was talking about somebody saving our ass from all this shit, and me pointing out certain things that haven't happened or are going to happen or supposed to happen, coming out of the mouths of truthers, okay, truthers. And remember, I said before, got to be careful what you listen to, okay. Now, see, I'm the kind of guy that I always say I'm from Missouri, but I'm not. The show me state. That's why I say that, because in Missouri they always had this saying, "Show me, show me." And I don't want inferences. I don't want people inferring that this is that. I mean, inferences can be a dime a dozen. You can infer a lot of different things. Okay, so a lot of these people, and I'm not going to attack these people. Let me make this clear. If you want to believe something, that's up to you. That's your choice. You're making a choice to believe something. So if you want to believe that, and I talked about hopium and stuff like that, if you want to believe anything, that's up to you. That's not for me to say, I don't want you to believe this, or you can't believe this, because then I would be as bad as the mainstream media, which is totally corrupt. I would never say, hey, you know what, you got to follow thunder, you got to do this, you got to do that. I'm just talking. I'm a watcher, okay? I'm an observer, and I'm an observer with common sense. And sometimes I have doubt, and sometimes I have hope, okay? And so I'm flexible. I'm flexible. Nothing wrong with hope as long as that it's well based. Um, but when I see things like, and I'm just going to be honest here, some of these people talking about, and these people I mean by some of the people that are called truthers or whatever out there, when they say things like, when they put up dates, or when they say things like, well, you can expect something in March, and then the next time when March goes by and nothing happens, they say, well, you can expect things around April or in the middle of April, and we should see some big changes. Now today, I watch everything. Believe me, I watch everything like a hawk. I am not one who does not listen to all sides, okay? But as I was listening today, or was it last night? I don't remember. But when I was listening, now the new paradigm, or the new so-called, and they've gotten off specific dates, but the new paradigm is, well, April, May, June. So it went from March to April to now April, May, June. See, the reason that I have a problem with dates is because I've been there and done that. I did that a long time ago. Now, at one time, I was in an apocalyptic religion. Okay, that was seemed like lifetimes ago. So I know firsthand of how they work. Freed myself from that a long time ago. And in this apocalyptic religion, they had a tendency to set dates for the end of the world, or for Armageddon, or for um, coming from a Christian viewpoint, the Great Rapture or whatever. And this revolves around eschatology. Eschatology is trying to figure out when the end times would come. So the reason that I have a problem with dates is because this particular organization that I was exposed to as a youngster, kept saying, oh, it's going to be 1890, or it's going to be 1914, or it's going to be 1975. And they had to back off that several times because when those dates came and went and nothing happened, what do you do? What to do? Well, you backpedal and you make up excuses. That's what you do. You backpedal and make up excuses. Or you supply the former narrative with a new narrative that covers your ass or tries to cover your ass. Of course, those that are paying attention to the elephants in the room, see, that's another elephant in the room. You can't ignore elephants in the room. If you do so, you do so at your own peril. You do so at your own sanity. And God knows mankind is neurotic enough. So why add an additional neurosis to the mix? That's what happens, see, and so I have a very keen eye and a keen ear for things in regards to promises. Again, I'm from the show me state, metaphorically. Show me. And I don't want inferences. I don't want somebody inferring things and saying, oh, you see, you have to look for the signs. Well, I look for signs better than anybody ever thought of looking for signs. But I don't infer things or I don't assume things because I see a certain incident. A lot of people will say, well, you got to look at what's happening. So, for instance, recently I saw a video about, and it was an actual video, of a satellite getting blown up, okay? And nothing was really said, but something was inferred. And actually, on some platforms, on some channels, okay, and I watch them all. I watch them all. I watch all the truthers. I watch all the. I don't watch mainstream media because mainstream media a long time ago lost credibility. And so when I watch alternative channels, I look for them. I look deeply into what they're saying to see if they can keep their credibility. Truth, okay? So on this satellite thing that supposedly came back into actually I saw the video. It was pretty spectacular. All kinds of fireballs coming back into the earth, and as they entered the Earth's atmosphere, they caused this gigantic light show. And so anyway, that evolved into, well, that's a deep state satellite. The good guys took down a deep state satellite. Okay, well, for those that want to believe that, then that's okay. Whatever, see, here's another thing. Whatever keeps you going, even if it's hopium or if it's false hope, if that's what keeps you going, if that's what keeps your center, if that's what keeps you somewhat sane, I don't have a quarrel with that. I really don't. People do need hope. I realize that. Because look at the world. It's FUBAR. That's a military acronym for fucked up beyond all recognition. And there's another one too, snafu. So, situation normal all fucked up. You could apply any one of those acronyms to the world as we're perceiving it, let's say. So bottom line is that for me to have hope, I don't need anything on this outside realm, this phony, delusional, illusional realm for hope. You have to base your hope on something that is a lot higher, and that would be your consciousness. Because when you get to the point of having a very high consciousness, a universal intelligent consciousness, then this shit seems much ado about nothing. Because so let's say the world's going to end tomorrow. Are you going to know it's ending? You might know it for a split second, but are you going to be around to worry about it? No. So why worry about it now? Why worry about it? The world's ending, and we're going to be under tyranny and control. We already are. That's a fact. But you have to get to that consciousness, that conscious state of where you are aware of who you really are. And who you really are, as I've said many, many times, is just a divine emanation. Matter, your physical being, is nothing more than if you took a piece of paper and you drew two lines and an X, and then you drew another one, that point where the lines cross is who you are. It's a point. And that point is derived from energy and matter. So as we look around, we realize that everything is energy and matter. And so if you get to that higher level of consciousness, you look at this as like a picture show. One minute it could be a horrific horror show, or next minute it could be a comedy show. That would depend on what kind of lenses you're looking through and how you perceive things. I think a good place to start with that would be, things just come to me. So, and I've said this before in different ways, but basically when mankind became introduced into this world through birth, he probably was pretty grounded, pretty centered, and pretty God-oriented, or the source-oriented, that energy. But as soon, like I've said many times, as soon as society and well-meaning parents and religion and politics and all that stuff, as soon as that came into the picture, man became neurotic. As soon as the baby started getting older and more mature and got exposed to certain stimuli and certain reactions and certain projections from other people, when that happened, man became neurotic because there was a split there. See, anytime there's a split in consciousness, you retain the old consciousness that you knew, but also there's a split that's added to that. Okay, and that split is called a neurosis. So that's how it started. Everybody in this that is in this world, by matter of being in this world, and by the matter of being exposed to complete propaganda, or let's say a complete made-up worldview, you have become neurotic. You were neurotic in your childhood. A neurosis was created, a split. Now, on top of that, as you go through life, more and more splits happen. More neurosis is acquired through being bombarded by so many, let's say, ideologies, religious dogma, pure propaganda, lies. And you see, you have different lies. One lie will be different than another lie, but it might be contradictory. Or it might be the same, but it might be the same lie in a different form. And so at some point, mankind becomes confused. Mankind becomes confused because he's already confused as to why he's in this physical body and in experiencing pains and hardship and the travails of life, when in reality what he really is spirit, pure spirit, or his soul should be on a higher level as to be able to fend off lies and propaganda or whatever. Where am I going with this? Well, the only way out is in. The only way out is in. And so what I do is I don't ignore one side, okay? I don't ignore the complete material, the physical realm. I don't ignore it in my videos. I touch on the lower third dimension, and I try to touch on the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension, or some people might call that densities. Different densities. I try to touch on both. And see, that's where I give hope. Okay. I don't give hope in situations that are in the illusion, the delusion within the illusion, man. No, I don't put any kind of weight. That's a false hope. Everything's a false hope other than enlightenment. See, that's the way I look at it. And so the only hope that you really have, or the only faith, or not even that, the only experience, okay, that you can have that is real is that of enlightenment, or that of going so far beyond the duality that you realize it for what it is. It's not about this low level lying propaganda. And everything is propaganda. Everything is propaganda. Everything's basically a lie. That's why you got to dig. But see, the more you dig, okay, the more you know, the more you wish you didn't know. Because it becomes so complex, you see. It's so complex, is that when you get into all these different, when you get into so much knowledge that you're just almost overwhelmed, then that also creates a neurosis. So what to do? Well, you got to keep your center. You got to keep grounded. You got to try to realize that you're really actually this multidimensional spirit that is sailing through the ether and the soup that surrounds you. That's what you have to realize. And it's so easy for us to get caught up in it. And I for one get caught up in it too. That doesn't mean that I don't know the things I know. That doesn't mean that I'm not an enlightened being. That just means that I can ascend and descend at will. I can come back down to the third dimension, talk about it. Why do I talk about it? What's my purpose for talking about it? Well, there's a part of me, okay, that feels that there's some purpose in it. if I'm urged from a higher level to talk about things or to call things to people's attention that they may miss, they miss everything. People miss everything. Well, then that's a purpose that needs to be fulfilled in awakening. And people talk about awakening. Hard for me to imagine people awakening when they can't even see the elephant in the room, when they can't see the obvious. Say, like, for instance, I read a thing today that said, we're just going to discuss just for a minute here. I'm going to just discuss what's out there in the news, okay? So as not to be censored, because all I'm doing is repeating the news and giving a comment on it, okay? So I see in the news the CDC says, oh, our new thing is that even though now that people are getting their vaccine, they can travel. But oh, don't forget to wear your mask. Think about that one. So if the vaccine, my question is, I mean, it's just a normal question. If the vaccine is supposed to take care of your immunity towards, let's say, a certain pathogen, and they're saying that that pathogen is something that can be stopped with a mask and a vaccine, well, then once you get the vaccine, why would you need the mask? Another elephant in the room. See, people they don't sit there and try to reason things out, you see. They don't go, well, wait a minute, that's contradictory. It's contradictory. And the CDC itself has vacillated back and forth between, oh, this is okay and that's okay, and things of that nature. Then you have the vaccine itself, which is, it says right on there, it's an operating system. It doesn't really say it's a vaccine. It says it's an operating system, really. What's that operating on? Then you see a lot of things, and this is in the news, it's out there. This is nothing new, where people die the day after or the day that they take a vaccine. Do a lot of people not die? Well, not right away. Get my drift there? Not right away. Are there ill effects? Well, not right away sometimes. But then let's not ignore the elephant in the room that if just one person dies or 10 die or 100 die, let's not ignore that. Put that into your little quiver of arrows, or put that into your thinking box up here, and determine on those things that are being said, and if they're contradictory or not, what you want to do as a person. That's called thinking. It's called consciousness. It's called critical thinking. Like I said in my video about consciousness, choices, consciousness and choices. Here's another thing. I think in my last video I touched on the subject of the alien agenda. Some people out there are gonna pronounce anybody that talks about an alien agenda. They're gonna pronounce a judgment on them and say, "That's far out, man. That's far out." But then right after I made that video and I was talking about don't be surprised if all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, some type of alien exposure, I'll put it that way, is imminent. Right after I did the video, Fox News came out with a man that used to work for the Pentagon. Several men, actually, more than one man. Now this is coming out right after I did my video, saying that soon papers were going to be released, intel papers, on what the government had compiled regarding UFOs, because they felt a need to release this at this time. Really? And the spin was, and this was on Fox News, I mean, I'm talking a week ago. Well, we don't know if they mean us harm. We don't know. There's three things they said. One, it could be our own advanced technology that we don't know about, but the ex-Pentagon guy said that's something I'm ruling out because we should know about our own advanced technology. Second thing is we don't know if it's somebody else's technology, like Russia or some other nation that is far advanced. And if that's so, he said, we've dropped the ball. Well, I guess that wouldn't be the first time they dropped it, would it? Uh, and the other thing, the third thing was that if it's not those first two things, well, then the inference was, well, it's an alien thing, or somebody from another star system. Now they're putting this stuff out for what reason now? For what reason? What's the reasoning behind putting all this stuff out right now? So mankind's already neurotic from just the masking of the world, the masking of the world, and the threat of having to have a vaccination passport when you travel, and the neurosis that's created from that. And then on top of it, this is classic deep state, covert, black ops shit. On top of that, what do they want to lay on man's head then to strike fear and terror and other feelings? What do they want to do now? Well, they want to do the coup de grace, and they want to say that we're being attacked by aliens, or they want to put it in people's heads that there's an unknown out there. The unknown is that we got objects flying around and making 90-degree turns at 2,000 miles an hour, which, as a pilot, I know that even if you just pulled 10 G's, you're in deep shit because you black out. And to go that fast and make that kind of turn, you would be splattered on the inside of the vehicle unless you have some kind of advanced technology that prevents that. And there's plenty of videos out there that show it. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not UFOs. I'm not saying that there's not Star Brothers. There definitely is. But what kind of spin do you want to put on the Star Brothers? Do you want to put a benevolent spin, or do you want to put a malevolent spin on it? That's another thing that, getting back to the elephant in the room, that's another thing that you got to figure out for yourself. Got to use some kind of reasoning. You got to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Well, yes, we know that in the ancient Sumerian civilization, beings came down here and altered our DNA. But in that scenario, there was also benevolent, malevolent. So one thing that you have to to do is to research, well, how far does this go back? What kind of agenda could that be? What kind of plan could that be? And it's even in ancient scriptures. It's in the Bible. It's in the uh, Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, ancient Sumerian texts, texts from all over the world, traditions, the Dogon of Africa. They all have the same story, that there was some kind of interference or manipulation, or even the Gnostic scriptures. I was perusing the Gnostic scriptures. You know, the Gnostic scriptures, the Nag Hammadi find, books that are as ancient and concurrent with the Bible. Now, in the Gnostic scriptures, they called them archons. They believed, just kind of like the Greeks do, that the archons were gods of a sort, or demigods, or lesser gods than the supreme God or the supreme creator. In fact, the Gnostics say that the archons that created this world is what got us into deep shit. Just giving you a little insight into the Gnostic tradition. So they say in the Gnostic tradition that materialism itself is evil. The whole material world is created on the premise of evil, of darkness, to mislead the pure spirit of the pure soul. And so they say the same things that the Bible says, only in a different way. And if you get into it, then you start to realize that it matches up more with the ancient Sumerian accounts of there being aliens that manipulated, or aliens that created a certain agenda a long time ago. Basically, that man was either going to be enslaved or not, and that battle's been going on a long, long time. So you have to realize, or you have to realize for yourself, you have to try to figure things out as to how we are situated right now as far as civilization, mankind, the earth, our future, our past, whatever. But then again, you can get deeply enmeshed in this stuff and try to figure out something you're not able to figure out. Because why? Because truth has been kept from people for so long. Truth has been kept hidden, okay, the real truth. And that's why when you start digging sometimes into ancient knowledge, and let's say just spiritual knowledge or mystery knowledge, some people, oh, that's the occult, man. Well, the occult means nothing more than hidden knowledge. Why has that label been twisted, okay, to indicate that you're messing with something you shouldn't? That's just almost like the conspiracy theory phrase. Where did that come from? Well, that came from the CIA, because they don't they don't want people questioning official narratives. They don't want people questioning official narratives. So here we are in a massive shitstorm, a soup storm, or whatever storm you want to call it. Here we are. What to do? What do you do? Well, jumping back up to the higher levels again, and I ascend and descend, and I go back and forth. And why do we do that? Well, to show you correlations, to use a device, a technique, a device to jog you into a certain consciousness. That's what Tantra is all about, Tantra yoga. Most people think that Tantra yoga is just about sex. Well, it is about sex, and it's about sexual energy, which is everybody's energy. Everybody has it. In fact, all energy is sexual energy because you're driven by it. But Tantra, which stands for the word technique, Tantra yoga, has certain methods and disciplines, not even really disciplines, I would say devices. Because when you think of discipline, you think of meditation in long, long terms of taking years and years and years. But Tantra is a thing to like use a device to catapult you in a more, let's say, I don't want to say rude fashion. That's not the right word. In more of a shocking fashion. It would be shocking to some individuals, to where you just flash into that consciousness without having to go through meditation for years and years and years. You become aware through devices. Just little things like your breathing and how you look at things and how you view things, and little exercises to jog you off into the realm of awareness of self. And when you realize, when you go through these little, let's say, techniques or jogs or devices, and you start realizing things, you start becoming more aware. And you might become aware of, when you become aware, you become aware of who you think you really are, or non-aware, say. So who we really are. Who are we really? Who are you? Whatever your name is, are you that? Am I Thunder? Am I Roger? Am I who I think I am? And who do you think you really are? How would you explain as a definition? Let's say you had to give a definition as to who you were. Think about that one a while. Just think about that. I have to give a definition as to who I am. Well, that would probably, for most people, take up several Bibles, several libraries, because we're all kinds of things. And those things are mostly the entrenched ego and its different diffusions off into neuroticism and splits. Okay. And so we're not just really one thing. Our egos are made up of, are multifaceted. And as we go through life, and I'm coming back full circle here, kind of, as we go through life, then we form all kinds of selves. See, when you go to the higher level of consciousness, you realize that your selves, your egos, your ego with its many multifaceted parts is not who you really are. And when you go to a higher level, you begin to see these multifaceted parts and all the different things. It can be actually scary because we're made up of, we are divided so many times. Our egos who we think we are the way we act, the way we perform, the way we move through the unreality. At sometimes it seems like we're one person, and sometimes it might seem like we're another person. Who is this person? We're multifaceted beings. That's why I said in the beginning, well, maybe sometimes I have hope and sometimes I don't have hope. Or sometimes I have faith and sometimes I have hope and sometimes I don't have hope. And sometimes I'm up and down and depressed and happy and sad and joyful. And all of these emotions can be hooked to a different part of the self. There's another elephant in the room. The self is an elephant in the room that you just, if you ignore it, well, then it's going to crush you. But if you see it for what it is, then you're able to understand yourself a little bit more succinctly. And then on top of that, when you raise your consciousness, once you see these egos and these different selves, if you're on that higher level of consciousness, you don't judge it. It's not something you judge. It's not something you go, oh, that self is, oh man, I don't know about myself or myself, or I don't know about this part of myself or that part of myself. And you begin, one self starts warring with another self. One split starts getting upset because the other split might be gaining ground or whatever. It's a complex situation. More than you can imagine, more than you will ever know. And that's what we see in society today. We see that man is not only elevated, he is not elevated into a higher consciousness or awareness that he even has an ego. And this ego is destructive because it gets accusatory, it gets satanic, to use a term, which means nothing more than adversarial or adversary. Doesn't mean anything more than that. Anything else you put on it, it's your problem. It's not what you think it is. You're your own worst enemy. You create and manifest what you want in this life, joy, sorrow. You're your own worst enemy. Your ego is your own worst enemy. So what happens when you try to relate to other people and these other people have all kinds of multifaceted egos? They don't know themselves. Well, then you got a bunch of dogs, like Pavlov pointed out in his great experiment, Pavlov's dogs, that react to stimuli and don't know why. They don't know why. All they know is when they heard the bell ring. See, the experiment was they would feed dogs, and every time they fed a dog, they had these dogs that they kept in cages, I guess, and every time they fed a dog, they'd ring a bell. Every time that bell rang, the dog knew, and it would even salivate and everything. It knew it was going to get food. So then he tried ringing the bell without the food, and what happened? The dog did the same thing, salivated and acted like it was eating, acted like it was going to eat or whatever. That's called conditioned response. So we have conditioned responses all around us, as is evidence with the stuff that's laid on us since day one, and also the recent stuff. I mean, the recent stuff is the elephant in the room, the glaringly obvious manifestation of man being a dog, a Pavlov's dog. responding to stimuli, responding to propaganda, responding to messages, responding to stimuli from other people, not knowing who he really is. Because when you get into a situation like we have now with certain people wearing masks and other people not wearing masks, and certain people advocating this, other people advocating that, then it becomes conditioned response. And that conditioned response may not all be that good. It might not be that good for you. What to do? What to do? Well, there's nothing much that can be done except that you realize on a higher consciousness what all this stuff is. And as far as your egos go, you can't judge yourself. Once you realize that this is happening, then why would you judge one part of your ego or another part of your ego? You would come to an acceptance that all these neuroses and splits are a functioning vehicle that you have to deal with. How do you deal with these functioning splits and these neuroses and these, and like I said, man was neurotic from the day almost from the day he was born, but no, after the informative years, a split was caused. What do you do? The elephant in the room again. Here it is. There's this big thing here, and you don't know what to do with it. You don't know what to do with it. Ignore it, you say. Well, in a sense, that could be right, because that would be in the Taoist tradition of detachment with compassion. Now, if you center in love, if you're centered, if you come from a place of the third eye or the crown chakra or the higher consciousness, then you always have that as a life preserver to be thrown to you, or actually it doesn't even need to be thrown. All you got to do is realize that it's there. Take refuge in. And that's what all great masters said. They said ascend beyond what is perceived. So where is this all going as far as like on the lower third dimensional world? What about the awakening? What about, well, a lot of people that are Christians will go, what about when is Jesus going to save us? Or when are the end times going to come? Or they're sighing and crying and moaning and groaning about, this is it, I don't know what to do, I'm at my wits. Some people are committing suicide, unfortunately. It's a very sad thing, and suicides have arisen along with this, enforced lockdowns and the stuff that they're imposing on you. Here's another thing. I know I jump back and forth, but like I said, I do that. It's a device. So I notice in some states that, like I guess there's 20 states now that have rescinded the mask thing and the lockdowns and all that stuff. And I also noticed that in one of the states that the COVID numbers have dropped since they rescinded the mask thing and the lockdowns, which is just the opposite of what they're trying to tell you through the federal government. That, oh, and then they come up with stuff like there's variants and stuff. People, if you can't see the elephant in the room, if you can't see the elephant in the room, then where do you expect humanity to go? If 90% of the people, or even 80% of the people, let's be generous, let's say even 70% of the people, can't see the elephant in the room and robotically obey anything they're told, how is that going to affect the rest of us who are not robotically controlled and are not buying into some kind of official narrative? And there's a lot of people that aren't. Now, are there a lot in comparison to how many people are on the planet? Not really. It's minuscule. But then it is thought that only a few who have a certain consciousness can change the tide of what's going on the planet. There's a hopeful thing. If you want to buy into any kind of hope, buy into the hope of raising your consciousness to the level where you can have a direct effect on the dimension or the density that we live in. That's hopeful. So what does that mean? Well, in order to have an effect on the rest of the populace and to be that strong an individual, or spirit, shall we say, or consciousness, well, then it is imperative upon you, if you think that's the way it can be done, it's imperative on you that you try to use some technique or some practice to raise your consciousness to where you can be effective in that regard. It's getting rather strange out there. I saw a video today where some guy was driving along in a car and he had a bullhorn. More power to you, brother. That's what I call action. He had a bullhorn and he was talking through his bullhorn as he was going down the street, and he was congratulating all the people on how they had bought into the official narrative, and I want to congratulate you. And he was being completely sarcastic, and people didn't know what to think. And this one guy got so pissed off because actually he wasn't wearing a mask, but the person he was, his wife or something, was. And as this guy was expressing his freedom of speech with the bullhorn riding along slowly in the car, this guy got so irritated because evidently he was unconscious to the point where he had anger about anybody that would offer a different scenario. He picked up his bicycle and ran at the guy in the car, and the guy rolled up his window, and he kept hammering his bicycle against the window. And the guy was like, "Back off, buddy. What are you doing? Get out of here. Quit irritating." And he did roll up his window for protection, but the guy hit the window so hard that it shattered into a million pieces and glass flew all over the guy. What does that tell you? What does it tell you? It tells you that what I was talking about before, about the zombie apocalypse and about the divisions that are caused, and about civil war. What does that tell you? It tells you they're succeeding with their narrative, their agenda. They're succeeding to the point where people are going to get violent with each other. About what? Wearing a mask? Another elephant in the room. Another elephant in the room. See it for what it is. See it for what it exactly is, and I think that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Divide and conquer, same old paradigm, same old warlike tactics, same old black ops bullshit that I've talked about endlessly. Why do I continue to do these videos? Well, because again, voices are needed right now. And see, even though I may disagree with some of the rhetoric or some of the, let's say, instilled hopium or whatever that some of these truthers are putting out there, even though I may disagree with some of it, that doesn't mean I disagree with all of it. Because when you awaken, you try to fulfill a certain purpose, even though you might not be fully awakened, you might not be fully enlightened. You proceed forward with the tools that are given you. Okay. I always look at things from every aspect. I never rule anything out or I never rule anything in, except what I experience personally. Then I can rule stuff out, rule stuff in. If I want to rule my ego out for a time, well, then I'll do that too. One thing I will say, though, and this is not to instill any kind of fear or buy into any kind of apocalyptic bullshit or buy into any kind of religious dogma or buy into any kind of fairy tale. I just can't do that. I can't buy in. I lost my thought here. Well, I see that's what happens when you ascend and descend. That's how I talk. I channel. I get an idea. I get a urge, and I start doing this. And that is on a lower level, on an egotistical level or some kind of level. Maybe not an egotistical. Maybe coming from no ego. It's a device to jog memories, to maybe improve the situation that we're living in. Just got to keep in mind, people, that it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't really matter what I say. You don't have to buy in anything I say. You don't have to believe anything I say. It's what you think, ultimately. It's what, and I ask people, I say, I've said this before, do your own research on any kind of level, mentally, physically, spiritually. Oh yeah, so what I was thinking about is the apocalyptic thing. See, I knew it would come back to me. On the apocalyptic thing, and I was saying as far as like what I might see in the future, well, I see an awakening, but it could be a rude awakening. There's awakenings and then there's rude awakenings. Rude awakenings aren't too much fun, because at that point, if it's a rude awakening, then you're in a situation where you're in dire shit. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a rude awakening. And that means that you might have to go through turmoil and hardship. It's much easier to have a different kind of awakening to, and I hope that this is what happens with mankind. I hope that mankind, if anything, I would like to see, doesn't necessarily, it's not necessary that mankind all become enlightened, not that kind of awakening, but it would be nice if mankind was just aware of the propaganda that's being used against him. It would be nice to have an awakening where people started making choices that they had researched, thinking lucidly, thinking coherently. And most of all, what would be nice is if they recognized really how they've been lied to. That would create a shift. That would create a huge shift, because if mankind realized that everything was a big fucking lie, what would you do? What to do? What to do? What to do then? Would you rebel? Would you want to go in there and tear people from limb to limb, or what would happen? Well, that's remains to be seen, I guess. But I would rather see the different kind of awakening that is like to a higher consciousness. And that would be bypassing the revenge card and getting into the love card. Compassion and love for your fellow man. If you found out you were tricked, horribly tricked, and you realized that it was done to your whole fellow man, wouldn't you start coming from a place of compassion for your fellow man, love for your fellow man? Oh man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry I had to go through it. What to do? Well, you can get heart-centered. That's what you can do. In fact, you can start doing that right now. I'm going to give you a little meditation. Might give you a couple. And these are Tantra meditations. These are devices. These aren't like I got to sit in the corner for 3 hours a day for 7 days a week and try to raise my consciousness. These are more direct. So I'm going to give you a couple. So you've heard me talk about the third eye. You've heard me talk about the chakras. You heard me talk about the crown chakra and the throat chakra and the heart chakra. And when I say to come from the heart chakra, that means you have to realize that you have an energy center there, just like you do up here. Sometimes we get too much in our head, so this technique is going to be fairly simple. And if you remember my previous video, you can couple that technique, which is just basically doing abdominal breathing slowly and realizing the top and bottom of your breath, trying to relax yourself, center, sit erect, close your eyes, put the tongue on the roof of your mouth to create an energy circuit. Breathe a while. And then I want you to picture yourself sitting in a Buddha-like position, and I want you to picture that your head has disappeared. Why do I say that? Well, this is a tantric technique. Because we live in our head too much and we don't live in our heart. So what happens if you sit there and you meditate, you go into a deep meditation, and you picture yourself from throat on up, disappearing, imagining it in your head? Well, then what happens then? Well, your energy goes where the mind goes. And where can the energy go if your head disappears? Well, it goes to your heart, it goes to your heart chakra, or it goes to your navel, or it goes to your base chakra, or your solar plexus chakra. So what you're doing by this imagination is you're transferring the energy down to your heart chakra, and you can concentrate. You can feel if your head's no longer there, and it's a twofold purpose. You don't think so much. Thinking is not good. It's not good because thoughts tend to sabotage you and question and doubt, and it's the monkey mind. So if you sit in a meditative position and you breathe deeply and relax and pretend like your head's invisible. We don't want to say it's off. Let's just say it's invisible. Then all of a sudden your energy starts gathering in the first chakra that it can, which would be your heart chakra, and you start feeling that flow. You start feeling that centeredness. It's real simple. It's just a simple little imagination that you do while you're sitting there quietly breathing. And that's been known, just that little technique there, Tantra, that's been known to trigger people into instant enlightenment. Here's another one. I'm going to give you two today. And I learned these from a master. I learned these from a supreme enlightened master and also a rebel at that. And I'm not going to mention names because I don't want any preconceived notions. So anyway, another one would be to take a black marker and put a dot on the wall. Oh, and you can make it about the size of a dime. Doing this same breathing technique, only with your eyes open, I want you to focus on that black dot. Now, what happens when you focus on that black dot? Here's the kicker. You can't blink your eyes. And we blink our eyes thousands of times a day. It's just a habit that we've gotten into. But what I want you to do is I want you to stare at that black dot and I want you not to blink your eyes. So you got to be careful when you do this because you blink your eyes so fast you don't even know you're doing it. And so as you sit there and you stare at the dot on the wall that is about the size of a dime, all kinds of strange things start happening to you. Your energy from your two physical eyes here start migrating up to your third eye, okay, which is your enlightenment eye, or to your crown chakra. The energy, because you're staring at this dot, okay. The dot soon, if you practice enough, and I don't want you to get stressed out about this. Oh, I can't do that. It seems like you play with it. You play with both of these techniques. You just play around with them. You don't take them seriously. And as soon as you don't take them seriously, that's when things start to happen. Just play with it once in a while. Now, you're going to find that when you try to focus on that dot, it's almost impossible. Well, there's a story about Bodhidharma, who was a monk that came from India and was he's the one that developed martial arts. There's a mythological story of where he sat and stared at the wall to gain enlightenment, but he kept blinking, and so what he did is he cut his eyelids off. No, I don't want anybody doing that, okay? That's a metaphor, okay? But that is a story about Bodhidharma. Well, the metaphor is, and what it is meant to be, is that it's real hard to stare at the wall because your energy, just like when in the previous meditation, when you pretend like your head's gone, your energy goes to your heart. Well, when you stare at the dot on the wall, this is a tantric technique. when you stare at the dot on the wall, your energy starts migrating to your pineal gland or your third eye. Now, it is said that if you can do this for 3 minutes without blinking, you're going to be in real good shape. People have become instantly enlightened by practicing this device, okay? Again, it's nothing to worry about. It's nothing to get stressed about. You just do it as long as you can. So if you sit there and you hear the clock tick 10 seconds, well, hey, that's good. Then relax. But even doing it 10 seconds, you'll notice a difference. You'll notice a marked difference in how you think. It's very subtle. So let's say you get up to like 45 seconds. Well, then you're really, really kind of doing good. 3 minutes is, if you can do that without blinking and you know you're really not blinking, you're going to be somewhere else. You're going to be somewhere else good, okay? So these are just a couple of techniques that I thought I'd end this video with. The first one, just remember to breathe, relax, don't get stressed out about, I can't do this, or I just gotta do this, man. No, that's not the attitude you want. You just want to play around with it for fun and see what happens. Those are 2 out of 112 or more techniques that I know. Well, I won't say I know them all, but there are 112. And as I think about it, I might present a few more techniques for you. And these techniques are going to bring you to a different kind of awareness. They're going to bring you to a heart center, and they're going to bring you to seeing through the third eye, which is completely different than seeing through your physical eyes. You're able to see the unreality as for what it really is. So again, these techniques go way back, Bodhidharma, even before then. These are just tantra technique, device to try to jog you into a different sense of awareness. So I think that on that note, I'm just going to leave it there today. And don't know if this video will stay up from some of the things I said, but my last one seemed to survive, so I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I hope it stays up just for the meditation techniques, and if they somehow take it down, well, then I'll put it up on BitChute or whatever. You can look for me on BitChute, the Desert Shaman, or on Rumble, the Desert Shaman. Try not to take things too seriously, because the less you take things seriously, the more you realize the humor in it. There's humor in it, and humor's good. Laughing's good. Dancing's good. Playing a musical instrument is good. I will say, though, that, just to end this video, that not to give any kind of false hope, that just for my own feelings, my own shamanistic feelings, my own higher consciousness feelings, I do feel that sooner, let's put it this way, because I don't give dates or I don't give hope, false hope. I'm just going to say sooner rather than later. I expect some kind of shift to happen, and whatever that shift is will become readily apparent to you. So I'll leave it there today. Peace unto you and love, and thank you.